Hey, what's up everybody? It's Kellen here from Start Your Systems again, and welcome back to Monster Energy Supercross the game. We are continuing on with the 450 career mode today, and we are in Oakland. Why are we not in Phoenix, you might ask, if you're familiar with this series, as my last race was in Anaheim too, so the next one should be Phoenix, of course. Well, I actually did race Phoenix, and I thought I recorded it, but lo and behold, I go back and see that my recording software actually crashed at the beginning of it, and I didn't realize it. Next minute, that whole video is a wash, so we're going to just go back into it. I did end up winning the main event in Phoenix on this here stock Honda. I'll talk about that in just a second. But won the main event, so 100 points total on the season because I've gone perfect, 4 for 4, winning the races so far. Roxon is second in the championship on 80 points, I believe. So he's 20 back, and so far, the only real challenge was that Anaheim 2 race where riding the stock Husky, it put me for a real tough challenge, battling with Cole Seeley for the victory, took the win, and obviously that one was a pretty fun little video to watch, so we're going to try to keep the entertainment up. But Phoenix was a pretty easy victory. Like I said, so I rode the stock Honda, just jumping between brands a little bit. The only thing that I do to these bikes at all is put Race Tech suspension on it, which really isn't, like, you know, it's an upgrade for sure, but it doesn't like change a whole lot with the bike. Really only handles, I think, or only helps the handling, so I don't think it matters that much. So if I continue to have race after race where it's easy, kind of like this one is looking like it is already, then I'll probably drop it back down and have nothing on the bike at all, just completely bone stock. Obviously I kind of, you know, mess around with the components and add some colors, graphics, and all that stuff, but really everything else beyond that is stock. So the bike should be underpowered comparatively to some of the riders that I'm racing against that are on the AI factory machines, but still seems like it's a little easy. Like I said, Phoenix was a pretty easy win. In the video, I actually let the whole field go, which is what I'm thinking about doing in this one as well. Let the whole field go about 5 laps in, and then tried to catch and pass everybody, which, again, was not terribly hard to do. And it's kind of that way in this game. The AI, they vary on different tracks. Anaheim 2 seems to be a track where they're pretty tough. Oakland was a track I knew they wouldn't be terribly tough on, just because I feel like there's some sneaky lines on this track that you can do that are a little bit faster than others. In general, there's 2 whoop sections, 3 if you want to count the Dragon's backs, and whoop sections are mega OP for the user characters in this game like myself, and not for the NPCs, because they're kind of like forced to go through them in 3rd gear, it seems. I don't know if that for a fact, but I definitely just like click into 5th and just blow right by them, no problem. So that is one of the parts where they lose time. Corners, some of the flat corners they're also not as good at, from what I can tell. Just a couple things here and there that definitely makes it easier to gain time on them. So maybe we'll let the whole field go here in a minute and kind of see where they are time-wise. But just trying to play with a couple different things in this game. You know, like I said, we went back to stock bikes. I wish if I could ride a 250F in the 450 class, because you can do that in real life, but in this game you cannot. And if you could, then maybe I could, you know, run a stock 250F and then really make things interesting on some of these races. And another thing I wish that I could do beforehand is get a better understanding for you know, which tracks the AI are going to be really good on versus which ones they're going to kind of suck. So obviously Anaheim 2 seems to be a track they're pretty good, and these ones, Phoenix and Oakland so far, not so much. Because then I could, you know, choose beforehand, well, do I want to maybe soup up the bike a little bit to make it less of a challenge, or, you know, I don't know, something along those lines. Anyway, I'm going to let the whole field go on the start straight here in a minute, just kind of talking you through some of my processes recently in playing this game and trying to get all the way through the career mode. I'm level 255 in this game now, so I'm really thinking that by the end of the 450 career mode, I'll probably have gotten to level 300, which is kind of like one of the top levels in the game. Like, you've pretty much unlocked most everything in the game by that point. Here's looking around the Honda a little bit. Like I said, I changed the components around, so I've got like red grips, red levers, red brake cable, red clutch hub and foot pegs, kind of stumbling over myself, and then red hubs, black chain, black sprocket. Just doing a couple different things. Got some white A-Star boots and a white Scorpion helmet, red Oakley goggles, red and black answer gear. Kind of a cool setup, I feel like. And we're letting the whole field go. Last coming through here is Mr. Vince Freeze. So we'll come through the field and see what we can't do. I pretty much just gave up about 35 to 40 seconds of time to the whole field. And so we're going to see if I can still win this thing from 15 minutes and from the back. So in the video that I was going to post, but obviously didn't record from playing this game in the Phoenix race, talked about a couple things, and I already hit on some of them actually at the beginning of this video. But in general, I do feel like that this game does a really good job at like replicating semi-realistic speeds. You can kind of do some pretty unrealistic things when it comes to rhythm sections and stuff like that, but the scaling, everything, like, and obviously the graphical inflections of it are great, but what everybody wants to see is better air control physics and really, generally speaking, kind of better ground physics too. I feel like you can kind of just hit things a little bit too easily, too fast. We talked about the rhythm section, whoop section conundrum, which is like some rhythm sections are built in such a way that you can basically hit them as a whoop section, and we've also seen in some of the videos I've done with replicating the Monster Energy Supercross tracks from this year in 2018 that most of the whoop sections I make on the tracks are actually, you start with a low whoop and then build consecutive 3-foot singles after each other, and that seems to work better than the small whoops and actually replicating what whoops should feel like, where you kind of, bounce off of them. You have to kind of lug the bike out a little bit. These ones, it's literally just like fifth gear and it's another straightaway on most of these whoop sections. So I kind of don't like that. I don't like the air physics, obviously, but in general, I do like this total package of a game. And with MXGP Pro coming out, actually at the end of the week when you guys will see this video, I'm really looking forward to see kind of the changes that they're able to make with that game and what they learned from this game. Obviously, we've been able to play the compound, which has a motocross track in this game. And it's a little bit, kind of taking those MXGP3 physics that they had, updating them so it works a little bit better for Supercross in this game. And now I think that they're going to try to reapply what they've learned from this game, throw it back into MXGP Pro, which obviously, like I said, I'm looking forward to. They talk a lot about pro physics and how they really worked hard to make it so that, for arcade players playing the game, that they have a certain threshold that it's not too difficult for them to play. But for the players probably like myself and most people probably watching this video that really want to get a good semi-realistic experience of motocross and, they know what a dirt bike feels like, so they give pretty harsh constructive feedback for the most part and want to play a game that feels like a real dirt bike should. So I think they work towards that. I can't, say how realistic it feels yet because I haven't had the opportunity to play it myself. But when I do, that's one of the things I will be looking for in the game to see, what did they learn from this package that they're carrying over into the motocross side of things, etc., etc., etc. But what I was going to talk about with that is, in comparison to MXGP TV, which basically these two games are compared a lot right now because they were released at such a similar time. They're two different game companies, but it's basically covering the same thing, which is dirt bike racing. This, is exclusive to Supercross, while MXGP TV hits on, dirt bikes and quads in Supercross, motocross, and waypoint environments, and then they have the UTVs, and, they're probably going to add a couple more vehicles from what I hear. But essentially, the main audience behind those games are the same people, which is motocross fans, and they get compared a lot. And I feel like MXGP TV hits on that more of a less realistic, more fun feeling game than this one does, where this is kind of the opposite. Like, it's definitely a fun game, no doubt about it, in my opinion, but you can do kind of more funny, odd video game type things when it comes to MXGP TV All Out, and I'm sure that some people will feel it's actually the opposite, and that MXGP TV actually has better physics. But this is just coming from my opinion, so you can choose to agree or disagree. I don't mind either way. But that's how I feel about it, and what I was talking about in my Phoenix video that I'll carry over to here is that this game, replicating the speeds, you can see the speedometer in the bottom right-hand corner of the speed, or bottom right-hand corner of the screen is the speed. And I was kind of relating it a little bit to the popularity of Supercross and motocross as a whole, because we live in a genre of sport, us motocross and Supercross fans, that's really small, kind of a niche group of people that, while we tend to believe, oh yeah, the industry's thriving, it's huge, it's massive, it's expanding all the time, people feel like that's happening. The reality is that it's not, and people come and go. The general basis of fans usually stay the same. They talk about with TV ratings this year that Supercross is growing, but I don't feel like it's growing at a rate that it could or should. Being a fan myself, and taking into account what I think that they could be doing, there's a lot of factors why I think that the rates aren't growing. But one thing I've come to kind of assume, and this could be way off the mark or it could be close, and that's kind of why I'm talking about it in this video, because I'd love to open up a little discussion about it and hear your guys' thoughts and opinions, is that the speed of motocross and supercross it's not really something that you tend to think about when it comes to dirt bike racing. Is speed, fast, wild. It's certainly dangerous. There's no question about that. It's thrilling. It's a spectacle. It's obviously a motorsport racing event. But the speed is something you don't get to hear a lot about as something that really blows people away when it comes to motocross and supercross. And the reason why I bring this up is the major motorsports of the world, i.e. F1, MotoGP, even NASCAR, I guess, can be clumped in there, but then like World Endurance, V8 Supercars, all of those disciplines of motorsports have machines and racing in it that can reach, oftentimes over 200 miles an hour, but at least get pretty close to it in many cases. And that goes for MotoGP too, which is, in my opinion, the premier form of motorcycle racing. As much as I would like to say that Supercross and motocross is, I really think that it's actually not. And in Supercross, the max you're going to get going, I would say this is a little bit off from that, because I think that maybe a long straightaway, i.e. like the ones that we had at Phoenix Supercross this past year, where they came out of the far end zone of the stadium after the finish line, went pretty much end zone to end zone, and they were going pretty fast down that, or in Vegas when they go up and down Thunder Alley, for example. The reality is there that as much horsepower as these bikes are making now, and as fast as they could be going, is that they're really maybe only hitting 55, maybe 60 miles an hour, depends on their gearing, I assume. And so the speed in that aspect is down. And I wonder, like, if the casual fan, they turn it on, and you see IndyCar, NASCAR in America, for example, and the speeds are always super high, like super close action, and a big crash happens and it continues to happen for like 15 seconds, whereas a big crash happens in motocross and supercross, it's usually over pretty quick. Someone cartwheels, the max that happens is the bike flips and rolls like for another couple seconds beyond where the rider stops. And I'm not saying that crashes is a measuring point, but that fans feed off of, but I'm using it as an example to say the speeds, generally speaking, and you can tell on TV even, are much higher in these other larger forms of motorsport. Supercross has done a pretty good job of bringing a rough and tumble, challenging motorsport like motocross into people's laps, essentially. Because you go to a NASCAR race as an example, because I've been to one before, and you sit in the grandstands, you can see pretty much the entire track. You have a TV monitor right in front of you to watch the race. And Supercross kind of does that for you too. You can see mostly the whole track from pretty much anywhere in the stadium. You have TV monitors around to show you what's going on otherwise. So that's done a pretty good job of like commercializing the sport and bringing it to, the people's laps essentially, within the genre of actually going to and seeing the race in person. I'm not talking about on TV, which is obviously another huge factor. But with the speeds down, like I said, I wonder if the casual fan, they're flipping through the channels, they come to Supercross, which is in Foxborough, live on Fox, and they're like, let me watch this for a little bit. And maybe they'll see something interesting or something fun. But the overwhelming question that I get asked when I say, hey, yeah, I grew up and I raced motocross, dirt bikes, and 98% of the time the rebuttal will be, oh, that's cool. Do you do like flips and tricks, or have you ever partaken in X Games? Because most of the time people associate dirt bikes these days with like the tricks aspect of it and not speed, which is racing. Because I feel like people turn on the TV and they see racing and they're like, oh, this is kind of cool, yeah, whatever. And then, after a while they see, oh, it's repetitive, it's kind of boring, they're doing the same thing over and over again, and they're not going that fast. So, I mean, like I said, it's not that every fan thinks this, but I wonder if it's a bit of a deterrent for the casual fan watching Supercross, is that maybe they don't think it's as dangerous as these F1 or NASCAR, IndyCar type of events, because the speeds are down, even though, in my opinion, it's a lot more dangerous than all of those, because you can crash a NASCAR, you can flip it over, you can roll and tumble 7-8 times and walk away. You can't do that in motocross and Supercross. You crash hard and you roll and flip 8-9 times. You're lucky to like get up and move around. It's pretty likely you're knocked out on the ground and getting loaded onto a cart or a backboard or something like that. So I think the danger aspect is still very high in the sport, but people don't equate that, I feel like, very often to this, because of the speeds are down. That's just something that like comes to my mind when I think about why would motocross and Supercross be failing, or not failing, but not gaining as much of an audience as it really could. And I just thought of it while playing this game, because it shows you the speeds and you can kind of get an idea, and you're like, okay, yeah, like 50 miles per hour, sure, that's fast, but that's slower than pretty much every highway or interstate in the United States, and people do that daily. And I feel like this kind of equates to like, so most people in their life will never get behind the wheel of a Formula One car, but it's kind of the spectacle in that, because you're like, holy crap, these guys are driving something I will never be able to drive, doing things I'll never see in my life, and it's wild, crazy, interesting, unique. This is a different sport, because anybody and their mother could go pick up a factory edition Ken Roczen Honda, and while they maybe can't go into Oakland Alameda Coliseum and race a Supercross track, they can go to any local racetrack and probably find a similar amount of jumps and hit the track themselves, and probably get a rude awakening to how hard motocross and Supercross is based on their initial assumptions. But like, you just don't get that. Like, people see the speeds of motocross and Supercross and they're like, oh, I drive faster than that every day of my life. But in Formula One's sake, they definitely don't. Nobody, or most people will not, go 200 miles per hour in a car in their life, unless they're street racing or somehow, or they're actual racer themselves. It's pretty unlikely someone's going to go 200 miles an hour in a car. It's very likely someone could buy a motorcycle or a dirt bike, go to the desert, go out even into the woods and find a fire road or something like that, and easily go the speeds that the best athletes in the world on these bikes are doing. And that's what I'm saying, is that, it's kind of a disconnect, is that they're like, oh, the speeds are low. It's not as exciting because they're not going as fast. So I don't necessarily think that that's a major factor in why Supercross and motocross isn't like a big mainstream sport, but I'm just, playing with ideas, and it's something that I came up with as a possibility, and that's why I wanted to open the discussion to see what you guys thought about speeds in general when it comes to dirt bikes, and is that a factor to the casual fan that might think it's boring because it's not fast? I don't know. You know, like you might get the guy that loves American football or something and loves contact sports and, you know, occasionally watches a motorsporting event, but they turn this on and they think, not as fast, not as exciting. Or just the general stigma of the sport, which always seems to follow through, which is like, oh, we're a total bro-down sport, and only redneck hicks race dirt bikes, and, you know, stuff like that. I don't know. Like I said, just something that came into my mind. Wanted to open up the discussion a little bit. Love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comment section below to see whether or not you feel like I'm way off the mark with that kind of general assumption of what fans like or do not like about motocross and supercross, and compare it to some of the other big successful motorsports in the world. It's just something I came up with. So we're on the final lap, and I was able to get around Muscan 3 laps ago, I think. So it took me about 12 minutes to get to the lead from dead last. But still, even on a stock bike, it's pretty easy. Realistic difficulty, realistic physics, 450 career mode, and you still can rather easily win these races. So we'll see what happens when we move into, I think it's Dallas the next week. See what happens there. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, maybe enjoyed my commentary. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on that as well. And what I should try to do different for videos going forward in this. Maybe you guys can say like, oh, give them a head start, or do this or do that. Love taking advice from you guys. And yeah, thanks for watching again. So hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit us up with your comments, questions, or concerns if you have them. I am heading out though. Kellen here on Start Your System saying so long for now.